Hey guys, it's Allison and it's time for another weekly check-in video. So this is the second one of these that I'm doing and I had a lot of fun doing the last one, so I thought I'd give it another shot and hopefully this will continue. I don't know if it's going to be able to be like an every week kind of thing. That's what I want it to be. I want it to be an every week kind of thing. But, you know, life happens and sometimes it just doesn't work out. Continuing with the theme, kind of what I did last time in my video, I'm going to talk about some books that I read this week and some other bookish things, and then, I don't know, we're just gonna see where it goes from there. So, the books that I have been working on this week are The Fellowship of the Ring and The Raven and the Dove. So I have been reading both of these this week, and I actually ended up finding an audiobook of The Fellowship of the Ring that I really liked, and it's really unique and different, and I'm going to talk about it for just a minute. So I had been trying to read this physically, and it's not that it wasn't good, I was just having like a hard time picking it up because I don't know, it's not as exciting as other books. Like, it's slow and the writing is really beautiful and you just kind of have to take your time with it. I was looking for an audiobook version of it because I had a lot of work that I needed to do on my Etsy shop, and I was like, I would like to just listen to this while I'm working because I feel like that would be like a good double productive use of my time. I'm reading and working at the same time. So that was my thought, and I ended up finding one. And the cool thing about it is that it's free, and the reason it's free is because it's fan made. So it was created by this guy named Phil Dragash or something. I probably just murdered that, so we're not gonna say it again, but his first name is Phil, and he has created audiobooks of the three books in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and they are fan made, so they're not like professionally done or anything. And I think it's really unique because he reads the books word for word. Like, there's none of it's abridged, which I think is really unique because you literally can't find an audiobook, like a legit audiobook, that is not abridged. And so I've been really enjoying it because I was like, I want to do an audiobook, but I don't want one that's abridged or dramatized, because if I wanted to do that, I could just watch the movies and it would be way more enjoyable for me. So I stumbled across this one and I've been listening to it on my phone. I have access to it through an app called Talkie Book. I think that's what it's pronounced like. But they have an app and they also have a website, so you could just listen on your browser. But they're not the only website that is hosting this audiobook, but it is available on their website and it's for free. The only thing is you can't download it, so if you're somewhere where you don't have a Wi-Fi connection, that is kind of like a pitfall, because you know, you would have to use your data to listen to it. But if you have Wi-Fi, it's a great option for listening to the books. I have absolutely loved listening to it. He gives each character their own unique voice, and he actually uses music from the movies, which is why I think it's free. Like, it's a fan-made thing because of copyright issues, so he can't legally sell it. But just if you love the movies and love music is like nostalgic for you, then this audiobook would probably be a really good thing to try out, just because it, like, I don't know, I really have been enjoying listening to it. It's been really great. And I actually played some of it for my husband this morning, and he was like, wow, that's actually really cool. And I'm like, I know, it's freaking awesome. This Phil guy is pretty great. So I will make sure that I link this website that I found this on in the description box, so you guys can check it out as well. It's just really good. I really have been enjoying it, and it's helped me to progress quite a bit in the book because, let me get on Bookly. Where's that? There it is. So I am almost done with it. I'm on page 336 out of 506. And Bookly says I have about 5.5 hours left of reading time to go before I finish it, so I'm going to be finishing that up next week. And I think that's all I wanted to say about The Fellowship of the Ring. The other book I have been reading, The Raven and the Dove by Caitlyn Davis, has been a buddy read with me and my friend Brianna. and I have made it this far. As of today, I'm on page 208. This is a reread for me. I have read this previously. I actually read it before it came out. I had gotten a copy of it from NetGalley, and I really enjoyed it the first time around, and I'm enjoying it this time around too. It's a really easy book to read. Like, I don't know, it's well written. It is YA fantasy, so there is that aspect to it if you're not into YA fantasy. Like, I'm really not into YA fantasy, but I actually enjoyed this book, and I think that's all I need to say about it. I'm enjoying reading it, and I'm excited to wrap it up next week. We are getting into the last week of April here, so, but I will talk about my reading plans in just a minute. I also wanted to go over a couple of books that I have. One of them I DNF'd, and I need to talk about it because I mentioned it on my last check-in, and that is the Left-Handed Booksellers of London. And I was really sad to DNF this book because I absolutely love Garth Nix's Old Kingdom series. I have not read a lot of his new stuff. Like, the only other one I've read was Angel Mage, and I enjoyed that book, but it did have its quirks. It was very interesting. This book is interesting. There are some quirky characters in here. There's some weird stuff going on. Okay, I only made it to page 102, but that's like a quarter of the book. And it's not like, it wasn't hard to read because the words are giant, and it's not a hard book to read. I just was not enjoying it at all whatsoever. So there's this main character named Susan, and a lot of things happen to her in the book, and she just kind of goes along with it. And it really like irritated me. Like, she didn't question anything. She was just like, oh, okay, this is really weird. Like, this is stuff that should have been like a little bit traumatizing. And I think that was intentional because I think she's always kind of known that there's like weird things happen around her, and she just kind of is like, oh, this is not any different than, you know, the rest of my life. So there's that aspect. And then there's Merlin. Merlin is a great character. Merlin is super quirky. He is one of these left-handed booksellers of London, and he's just a very interesting person. And I will just leave it at that and let you guys, if you read this, discover who he is on your own. The thing that I think the reason why I ended up DNFing this ultimately is because it's not what I thought it was going to be. So I thought this was going to be a book about gangster booksellers. This is not a book about gangster booksellers, which was the most disappointing thing in the world to me because I really, really wanted it to be a book about gangster booksellers. But it's not. It is instead a book about left-handed and right-handed booksellers who own bookstores and sell books, but they also fight or keep in line like all of the traditional fantasy creatures, like anything you've ever heard, like gremlins and all of that kind of like more really traditional type mythical beings and whatnot. Those are all in here, and that's what the left-handed booksellers are actually like waging war on or keeping track of or keeping in line or whatever. And that was just so disappointing to me because I really wanted this to be like, you know, The Godfather retold as like booksellers that do crime on the side, and it's not. And I wasn't getting into it. Another thing, and I did read a lot of reviews before I officially DNF'd this to make sure if I was just missing something or whatever, and a lot of the reviewers are like, this book has a lot of tell and not show, and I was picking that up quite a bit. There was just like the narrator is telling you something and the characters are just going along with it, and it was just really, really boring. I just was not in the mood to read this book at all whatsoever, and I am officially DNFing this book. I will not be picking it up again. So that is the one unfortunate book that I had to DNF this week. And then I did unhaul another book. I know I don't talk about unhauls and DNFs very often on my channel, but I figured that this weekly check-in would be a good place to do that because then it's not like the main focus of the video, because I can't stand it when people are like, the 20 books that I unhauled and basically they all sucked, and I'm like, yeah, but what if other people would like that instead? Like, you can talk about a book you didn't like in a positive way to not make other people not want to read it just because you didn't like it. So I try not to make unhauls and DNFs a major focus of my channel because I just don't want that kind of negativity on my channel. That's something that I keep more private between like myself and my husband and my friend Brianna. I'm not gonna get on here and rant about how horrible a book was unless it's A Court of Silver Flames. We're not gonna talk about that book. Unless the book is really horrible, I'm really not gonna get on here and like bash it, so don't expect that from me. That's not the kind of channel that I want to have. But I did unhaul another book, and that is A Song of Race and Ruin, and basically the reason I unhauled this book is because it's YA fantasy, and I guess it's very cliche. You know, it follows... If you've read any YA fantasy book in the last 5 years, you've probably already read this book. It just has different characters in it. It basically follows, there's 2 point of views in this book, and I don't really know that much about it, so I really shouldn't talk about it. I feel like this would be a great book for emerging YA readers, like kids that are like, you know, they're too mature for middle grade, but they still kind of read it, but then they're also ready to like dive into YA. This might be a good option for them. I also know in the front it says, there is a note from the author. It says, please note this book depicts issues of mild self-harm, ideation, I am not sure if I said that word right, fantasy violence, emotional and physical abuse, anxiety and panic attacks, parent death, and animal death. I have done my best to approach these topics with sensitivity, but if you feel this kind of content may be triggering, please be aware. So if you know a young reader that is wanting to move into the YA fantasy genre, just be aware that this book does have quite a few trigger warnings in it. So if you're close with this person and you know the state of their mental health and like their background and stuff, just be aware that there are sensitive topics in this book, and that you shouldn't just be like, oh my gosh, this book was so good, you should check it out if you're ready to get into YA fantasy, because you could end up causing more harm than good. So just be aware that there are trigger warnings in this book. That was another reason why I didn't want to read this book, because I feel like that kind of stuff is handled super poorly in YA books, because it's just content that's too mature for the genre, and they have to edit it so much, and the kids... I feel like when people read it, not just kids, because kids aren't the only ones that read YA fantasy, but I feel like when people read that kind of stuff in YA, they just become so desensitized to it, because it's not handled in a serious manner. And so that those two, the super cliche-ness of this book, and then that other aspect of the triggering content in this book, are the reasons why I decided to unhaul it. So that's all I'm going to say about this book. So plans for next week. Next week I plan to finish up my reads of The Lord of the Rings, or The Fellowship of the Ring. I'm not going to read the whole series this week. I don't have time for that. And then The Raven and the Dove. And then if I do perchance finish them before May starts, I think I'm actually just going to go ahead and get started with my May TBR, which is... I really want to pick this one up. So I have this one on my May TBR, which I know that video is not up yet, but I do have this Dune on my May TBR, and if I end up finishing The Fellowship of the Ring and The Raven and the Dove before the end of April, and I have time to start this one before May does, I will be picking this one up because I am just ready. I'm ready to read this one. I feel like after I read To Sleep in a Sea of Stars and how like complex and dense that book was, I feel like I am maybe kind of ready to read this one. So we're gonna give it a shot, and I hope I love it, because I just need a book right now that like steals me away from reality and is like, you need to live in this world for a little bit. You need a break from reality, because reality sucks right now. So I'm looking forward to reading this book very much. It's been on my TBR like every month since I purchased it, mostly because it's freaking gorgeous, but also because it's like classic sci-fi and I really want to read it. So that is my plans as far as reading goes for the next week. I still really don't have anything else to share with you guys that's not about books, and it's not because my life is boring, it's just because I don't know what to talk about. So I guess if you would like me to talk about something specific, like, I don't know, maybe my favorite things this week, I don't know, anything you want to know, just ask me in the comments and I will try to answer that question in next week's video. Which that would be kind of fun. It'd be like a mini Q&A every week. That would be kind of interesting. So Any questions you have, drop them in the comments, and I hope you guys all have a lovely and safe week, and I will see you in another video. Bye!